The huge meeting room was filled with fear. Leaders from 47 different alien races sat around a giant crystal table. Their voices mixed together in a loud mess of clicks, hums, and strange sounds. Some talked with their minds instead of their mouths. High Chancellor Vexthara was the leader of this meeting. She was tall and thin with blue skin and 6 fingers on each hand. Small slits on her neck opened and closed as she breathed. She looked very worried. "We have a big problem," she said in a loud voice. "The raiders are getting worse. They attack our ships and steal everything. They kill our people and destroy our homes." The other aliens nodded. They all knew about the raiders. These evil creatures came from nowhere and disappeared just as fast. They had been attacking for 3 years. Now, every month, more ships were lost. More people died. Commander Zixmo looked like a giant insect. His body was covered in hard green plates. When he talked, it sounded like clicking sounds. Our best ships cannot stop them. Our strongest weapons do nothing. What can we do? Before anyone could answer, a new voice filled the room. It came from a blue light that showed the shape of a human man. He wore a simple blue uniform with no fancy decorations. "My name is Jake Murphy," the human said. "I speak for the Earth government. We know about your problem with the raiders." The aliens looked at each other with surprise. Humans were new to space travel. They had only been flying between stars for 200 years. Most alien races had been doing it for thousands of years. "What do you want, human?" asked Vexthara. "We want to help you," Murphy said simply. This made many aliens laugh. The sound was strange because different races laughed in different ways. Some made whistling sounds. Others clicked their teeth. Zixmal stood up on his 6 legs. "Your people are babies in space. You have no good weapons. You have no strong shields. Your ships are slow and weak. How can you help us when we cannot help ourselves?" Murphy smiled. The expression made some aliens feel uncomfortable. Human faces were strange to them. "You are right," Murphy said. "Our weapons are not as good as yours. Our ships are slower. Our shields are weaker, but we have something you do not have." "What is that?" asked Chancellor Corylon. She lived in a big ball of water because her people could only breathe underwater. Her voice came through a machine that changed her water. Sounds into words the others could understand. "We have honor," Murphy said. The room became very quiet. The word honor was hard to translate into alien languages. Most races had stopped believing in honor long ago. They thought it was stupid and dangerous. Vexthara made a confused sound. "Explain this word honor to us." Murphy thought for a moment. "Honor means doing the right thing even when it hurts you. It means protecting people who cannot protect themselves. It means keeping your promises even when breaking them would be easier." "That sounds foolish," said Dr. Kellinara, a scientist from the Meridian colonies. Her people looked like walking crystals that changed colors when they talked. Right now she was glowing red, which meant she was angry. "Smart people think about themselves first. That is how you survive." "Maybe," Murphy said, "but that is not how you live." The aliens did not understand what he meant. For them, surviving and living were the same thing. "What exactly are you offering?" Vexthara asked. "My government will send our colonial defense corps to protect your trade routes. We will guard your settlements and fight the raiders. We ask for nothing except fuel for our ships and food for our people." This made the aliens very confused. In their experience, nobody did anything for free. Every service had a price. Every favor required payment. "You lie," said General Kortash, a warrior from the Battle World Empire. His people looked like walking rocks with 4 arms. "No one fights for strangers without payment. What do you really want?" We want to help because it is the right thing to do, Murphy said. That is what honor means. The meeting went on for 3 more hours. The aliens asked many questions. They wanted to know about human weapons, and ships and soldiers. Murphy answered all their questions honestly. He did not try to make human technology sound better than it was. Finally, Vexthara called for a vote. Should we accept the human offer of help? The vote was close. 24 races said yes. 23 said no. The humans could help. 3 days later, the first human ships arrived at Kepler Station. This was a big space station where many races came to trade goods. It was also where the raiders attacked most often. Captain Lisa Hayes commanded the human. Warship New Orleans. Her ship was not very big, but it looked strong. It was painted gray with the flag of Earth on the side. Colonel Ryan Blake led the human soldiers. His ship was called Liberty, and it carried 200 Marines. These were Earth's best fighters. When the ships docked at Kepler Station, something amazing happened. The human soldiers came out wearing armor that looked like it came from old. Stories. Each suit of armor was black metal with gold lines. The soldiers carried weapons that looked both old and new at the same time. They had electric spears that could shoot lightning. They had guns that fired metal bullets instead of energy. Beams. Most surprising of all, they carried shields with pictures of Earth animals and symbols. Station Commander Heldrak was a lizard man from Soria, Prime. His green scales turned pale when he saw the humans. "By the void," he whispered. "They look like the knights from our old stories." Every alien race had legends about noble warriors who fought for good causes. They called them different names: knights, guardians, protectors, champions, but all the stories were similar. These warriors fought not for money or power, but because they believed in doing what was right. Most aliens thought these stories were just myths. They believed that real warriors only fought for practical reasons. Captain Hayes walked up to the group of alien leaders. Her armor made soft humming sounds as she moved. The helmet under her arm showed a kind face with brown hair and green eyes. "We know you think honor is just a story," she said. "We know you believe that noble warriors are myths from the past. But humans never stopped believing in these things. We never stopped needing heroes." She pointed to her soldiers who stood in perfect rows behind her. Each Marine stood straight and proud. Their armor gleamed under the station lights. These men and women did not come here for glory. They did not come for money or fame. They came because you asked for help, and helping people who need it is what we do. Before anyone could respond, loud alarms began ringing throughout the station. Red lights flashed everywhere. Over the speakers, a voice announced the terrible news. All stations, all stations. We have 15 unknown ships approaching fast. They match the profile of raider vessels. All civilians report to safe areas immediately. The aliens began to panic. Some ran toward their ships to escape. Others hurried to the station's strongest rooms to hide. But the humans did not run. They did not hide. Instead, they formed up in battle formation right there in the docking bay. 200 armored warriors stood in perfect lines, their weapons ready, their shields locked together like a metal wall. Captain Hayes put on her helmet and took her place at the front of the line. Her voice came through the speakers clear and calm. "All Marines, remember your training. Remember why we are here. These people called for help, and we answered. Now we show them what human honor looks like." The aliens watched in amazement and fear as the humans prepared to fight. These strange warriors from a young race were about to face an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for years, and they were not afraid. The raider ships moved through space like hungry wolves. They were long and dark, shaped like sharp knives. The metal on their hulls seemed to eat light instead of reflecting it. 15 ships total, each one bigger than the human destroyer knew. Orleans, Station Commander Heldrak, stood in the control room watching his screens. His lizard hands shook as he pressed buttons. "All shields are at full power," he reported. "Civilian ships are moving to the far side of the station." Captain Hayes stood beside him. Her armor made soft beeping sounds as it checked her weapons and life support. "How long can your shields protect us?" "Against 15 ships." Heldrak's throat made a nervous clicking sound. "Maybe 10 minutes. Probably less." The aliens in the control room looked scared. Some were already packing their things to run away. They had seen what the raiders could do. Whole colonies had been destroyed. Thousands of people had died, but the humans were different. Sergeant Alex Turner spoke into his radio. His voice was calm and steady. "Ma'am, my Marines are ready to defend the station. Request permission to take positions." "Permission granted," Hayes replied. "All units assume defensive positions. Remember your training, and remember why we are here." What happened next shocked every alien who saw it. Instead of hiding behind walls or running to safe rooms, the human Marines walked to the center of the station. They formed up in the main plaza where everyone could see them. 200 warriors in black armor stood in perfect rows. They're electric. Spears pointed up toward the ceiling. Their shields locked together to form a solid wall of metal. Not one Marine moved from his position. "What are they doing?" Chancellor Coralin asked through her water tank. Her tentacles waved with confusion. "This is suicide. They should take cover." Captain Hayes was walking toward the front line. Her own armor was sealing around her as she moved. In human culture, we call this making a stand. When something is worth protecting, you do not hide. You become the wall that protects it. The first Raider attack pods hit the station like falling meteors. The whole structure shook from the impact. Emergency doors slammed shut to keep the air inside. But the creatures that crawled out of those pods were nightmares. The Raiders called themselves the Devourers. They looked like humans, but wrong. Too tall, too thin, with arms that bent in strange places. Their skin was black and hard like insect shells. Instead of weapons, they had claws and teeth that could cut through metal. They moved through the station corridors like a black river of death. In the past, they had never found resistance. Every race they attacked either ran away or died quickly. They had never fought humans before. The Devourers poured into the main plaza, expecting to find panicked aliens running for their lives. Instead, they found 200 humans standing in perfect silence. The lead Devourer stopped walking. Its head had no eyes, but it could sense heat and movement. It tilted its head to one side, as if asking a question. In all its battles, prey had either run or cowered in fear. They did not stand. In formation and wait. "This is Sergeant Turner to all units," came a calm voice over the radio. "Remember, we hold this line. Whatever comes through those doors does not get past us." The first Devourer attacked with a scream that hurt the ears. It leaped through the air, its claws reaching for Turner's throat. The sergeant's electric spear fired with a sound like thunder. Blue lightning hit the creature in the chest and threw it backward. Then all the Devourers attacked at once. The battle was like nothing the aliens had ever seen. The Raiders moved fast as snakes and hit hard as hammers. Their claws could cut through most armor like paper. Their teeth could bite through steel cables, but the humans did not break. When prided, Danny Wright's shield cracked under a Devourer's claws. He did not run away. Instead, he pulled out a knife and drove it into the creature's neck while it was still trying to understand why its claws had not gone through his armor. "Wright's down." shouted Private Rachel Stone as she saw him fall. Moving to help him. Negative. Wright's voice came through his helmet as he fought another attacker. Hold the line. Do not break formation. And they did not break. When their electric spears ran out of power, they used their bullet guns. When the bullets were gone, they used knives. When the knives broke, they used their armored fists. Every time a human fell, another Marine stepped forward to take his place. The line never moved backward. It never bent. It never broke. The alien watchers stood in amazed silence. These creatures had terrorized the galaxy for decades. Whole fleets had run from them. Entire colonies had been abandoned rather than fight them. But the humans were not running. Impossible, whispered Eldrick. They are actually pushing the raiders back. The turning point came when Captain Hayes joined the fight. Her armor was newer and stronger than her Marines, but she fought with the same determination. When a devourer the size of a small truck charged at her, she did not dodge or step aside. She planted her feet, raised her shield, and met the charge head-on. The impact made a sound like a car crash. Hayes was thrown backward, but kept her balance. In the moment when the creature was off balance from hitting her shield, she struck with her spear at close range. The electric bolt went right through the devourer's body. The creature fell and did not get up. A cheer went up from the human ranks. Not a cheer of bloodlust or hatred, but a cheer of victory. They had proven that these monsters could be beaten. The other devourers began to hesitate. They had never seen their kind defeated in close combat. They had never fought creatures that would not run when faced with superior numbers. One by one, the raiders began to fall back. Then they began to run. The few that remained alive fled to their ships, leaving their dead behind out in space above. The station, the raider fleet, was also in trouble. The human ships had done something that no alien fleet had ever tried. Instead of keeping their distance and firing long-range weapons, they had moved in close. Commander Sam Peterson controlled the destroyer Phoenix. His ship was smaller than the raider vessels, but he used tactics that terrified the enemy. The Phoenix flew right up next to the biggest raider ship and fired all its weapons at once. All ships follow Phoenix's lead, came Hayes' voice over the radio. Get in close where their big guns cannot target us properly. The human strategy was simple but effective. The raider ships were built for long-range attacks. They were not designed for close combat. When the human ships got near them, their weapons could not turn fast enough to hit the smaller, faster targets. One by one, the raider ships began to take damage. Their formation broke apart as each ship tried to deal with human vessels that seemed to come from every direction at once. The final blow came when Peterson's Phoenix rammed into the raider command ship. Both vessels were destroyed in the explosion, but without their leader, the remaining raiders lost coordination. "This is Captain Hayes to all raider vessels," came a transmission on all frequencies. "You have one chance to leave. Exit this system immediately, or we will show you why humans earned their reputation as the most stubborn fighters in the galaxy." For the first time in their history, the Devourers chose to retreat instead of fight. The remaining raider ships turned and fled into deep space, leaving their dead behind. The aliens watching could hardly believe what they had seen dot in the plaza. The human Marines were helping their wounded comrades. 15 humans had died in the fighting. 23 were injured. But they had one. Captain Hayes stood before her. Troops and spoke words that would be remembered across the galaxy. Today we showed them something they had never seen before. We showed them that some things are worth more than life itself. We showed them that humans do not abandon those who ask for help. She looked around at the alien observers who had gathered to watch the aftermath of the battle. You thought honor was a myth. You thought knights were just stories from the past. But honor is not about having the best weapons or the strongest armor. Honor is about standing up when others cannot. It is about saying no to evil, even when saying no might get you killed. The aliens said nothing. They were too amazed to speak. Within hours, reports of the human victory were spreading through the galactic communication networks. Every major civilization was analyzing the battle recordings, trying to understand how primitive humans had succeeded where advanced fleets had failed. But more importantly, something else was spreading through the galaxy. For the first time in decades, people were talking about Hope. If humans could defeat the raiders, maybe other races could too. If knights were real, maybe other heroes could exist as well. The age of fear was ending. The age of courage was about to begin. News of the human victory at Kepler Station traveled faster than the fastest ships in the galaxy. Within days, every major alien government had teams of scientists studying the battle recordings. They watched the same scenes over and over, trying to understand how it was possible. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was a human scientist who studied alien minds and cultures. She found herself speaking to huge audiences of the smartest beings in the galaxy. They all wanted to understand one thing. How did humans fight so well when their technology was so basic? You have to understand something about humans, she explained to a meeting of alien scientists. Most of your races followed the same path. As you became smarter and more advanced, you stopped making decisions based on feelings. You chose logic over emotion because logic keeps you alive longer. A crystal-like being named Quindle raised one of his sharp arms. This makes sense. Emotional thinking leads to mistakes. Why did humans not follow this same path? Rodriguez thought carefully about how to explain this. Humans did become more logical, but we never completely gave up our emotional side. We kept something we call the warrior spirit. Define this warrior spirit, demanded Ziegther, a military expert who looked like a giant insect. It is the belief that some things are more important than staying alive. Some principles are worth dying for, even when dying serves no logical purpose. The questions came fast from dozens of different species. How do you train soldiers to ignore their survival instincts? How do you keep a military unit working together when individuals are willing to kill themselves? How do you measure the value of illogical behavior? But the real shock came when more human ships arrived in the Kepler system. Instead of warships, 3 passenger vessels came out of hyperspace. They were filled with volunteers who had heard about the battle and wanted to help. Captain Ben Foster commanded a ship called Ranger. It used to be a mining vessel, but his crew had added weapons and armor. His team was made up of engineers, teachers, farmers, and shopkeepers. They had no military training, but they wore the same black armor as the Marines. We heard you could use some help, Foster told Captain Hayes during their meeting. My ship is not much to look at, but we have 200 good people ready to stand with you. Hayes looked at the reports about Foster's crew. Captain, these people are not soldiers. I cannot ask civilians to fight in a war. You are not asking, Foster said with a smile. We are volunteering. That is what humans do. The idea of volunteer military service confused most alien civilizations. Their armies were either forced to serve by law or paid to fight. The idea of people choosing to fight without being forced or paid was something new. But the volunteers proved their worth when the Devourers came back with a bigger fleet. This time, the raiders brought 30 ships. They planned to overwhelm the defenders with pure numbers. Intelligence reports said they had learned from their first defeat and were bringing more warriors. They did not understand human adaptability. The battle that followed became known as the Kepler Liberation. The human fleet now had 5 military ships and 12 converted civilian vessels. They fought the raiders in open space, while the station defenders prepared for another ground battle. Lieutenant Commander Sam Peterson commanded the destroyer Phoenix. He used fighting methods that shocked alien military observers. Instead of staying far away and exchanging long-distance fire, the human ships moved in close. Their crews accepted massive damage in order to concentrate their firepower on enemy vessels. Phoenix to all ships, Peterson's voice came over the radio. We are going to ram their biggest ship. All hands, prepare for impact. The Phoenix accelerated straight toward the largest raider vessel. Enemy fire tore holes in her hull, but the crew calmly reported damage as they continued their approach. At the last moment, they fired every missile they had into the enemy ship's side, then crashed into it at full speed. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire, but the raider fleet lost its command structure. By the ancestors, whispered High Chancellor Vex Thara, watching the battle from her own ship. They are winning through suicide attacks, but it was not suicide. It was sacrifice. Every human death had a purpose. Every loss was calculated to achieve maximum damage to the enemy. They fought with the cold efficiency of machines, but they were guided by principles that no machine could understand. When the battle ended, the raider fleet was scattered. Their surviving ships fled into deep space. Kepler Station was safe. The cost had been high. 3 human ships were destroyed. Over 100 people had died. But as the survivors gathered for a memorial service, the alien observers saw something they had never witnessed before. The humans mourned their dead, but they also celebrated their sacrifice. Captain Hayes stood before the assembled crews and spoke words that would be remembered across the galaxy. Today we learned that knights are not myths. They are not legends from a primitive past. They are what we become when we choose to be better than our fears, stronger than our doubts, and more committed to others than to ourselves. As she spoke, requests for human protection began flooding in from across the galaxy. Dozens of star systems that had been resigned to raider attacks suddenly dared to hope for something they had never experienced. Real security. But the humans could not be everywhere at once. They had fewer than 2,000 people spread across dozens of systems. The requests for help numbered in the hundreds. That was when something unexpected happened. The Zalonian Empire announced that they were forming their own version of human marines. They studied human training methods and began teaching their soldiers about concepts like honor and self-sacrifice. The Korthic Confederacy started training mixed units where individual soldiers learned to act independently instead of just following hive mind orders. Even the peaceful Aquarians began forming defensive militias based on human principles. Dr. Rodriguez watched these developments with amazement. It is not just about copying human military tactics, she reported back to Earth. They are learning to be something they have never been before. They are learning to be heroes. The transformation was visible in small ways at first. Alien security. Forces that used to retreat when faced with superior numbers began standing their ground. Civilian populations that used to evacuate at the first sign of trouble started organizing their own defenses. On the mining world of Meridian Prime, Commander Kate Sullivan established the first human defense outpost. Her team of 50 Marines and engineers arrived to find empty cities and broken defense systems. The population had fled after repeated raider attacks. Within weeks, Sullivan's team had not only repaired the defenses, but convinced the original population to return. The key is showing them it is possible, Sullivan explained to Captain Hayes during their weekly meeting. These people have lived in fear for so long, they forgot what normal life feels like. The human approach to defense was different from standard galactic methods. Instead of building fortified bases separate from civilian areas, the humans integrated themselves into the communities they protected. They taught local people basic fighting techniques. They helped repair damaged buildings. Most importantly, they stayed Other species provided security services based on contracts. They protected you as long as you could pay them. Humans made commitments that went beyond money. "We are not mercenaries," Sullivan explained to the miners when they offered to pay for continued protection. "We are guardians. You do not pay guardians. You become family to them." This concept of chosen family resonated with species across the galaxy. The Saurian colonies, who traditionally kept to themselves, began requesting human advisors. The Depth Singers, who had never trusted surface dwellers, invited human engineers to help design underwater defense systems. But the real test came when reports arrived of a massive Devourer fleet moving toward 5 different star systems at the same time. The target worlds could not have been more different. New Carthage was a wealthy trade hub with strong defenses. Harmony Station was a diplomatic meeting point for 3 species. The agricultural world of Greenfields supplied food to a dozen colonies. Crystal Falls was a mining operation on a dangerous planet. Eden's Gate was a frontier settlement with barely 10,000 people. By any logical analysis, the humans could not defend all 5 locations at the same time. Their total force was fewer than 2,000 people spread across dozens of systems. The raiders numbered in the tens of thousands. "We have to choose," argued General Patricia Stone, the senior human military officer in the region. "Focus our forces on the worlds we can save. Evacuate the others." But Colonel Ryan Blake, now promoted to regional commander, disagreed. "We do not abandon anyone. That is not who we are. Blake, be realistic. We do not have enough ships, enough people, enough firepower to be everywhere at once." Blake stood before the tactical display showing all 5 threatened systems. "Then we will have to be something else." What happened next became legend across the galaxy. Instead of concentrating their forces, the humans divided them. They sent small teams to each threatened world while calling for something that should not have been possible. Volunteer reinforcements from species who had never fought alongside humans before. The response was immediate and unprecedented. Zalonian. Ships arrived carrying hastily trained militia forces. The attack on 5 worlds at once was the biggest test the galaxy had ever faced. The Devourer fleet was massive, over 300 ships moving toward New Carthage, Harmony Station, Greenfields, Crystal Falls, and Eden's Gate. Each world was different, but all were in terrible danger. Colonel Ryan Blake stood in the command center looking at the star map. Red dots showed enemy ships approaching all 5 systems. Blue dots showed the tiny human forces trying to protect them. The numbers looked hopeless. "Final count is in," reported Major Linda Carter, Blake's second in command. "We have 37 ships total, mixed human and alien crews. The enemy has 10 times that number." Blake nodded slowly. "What about ground forces?" 800 human Marines. About 2,000 alien volunteers with basic training, against an estimated 15,000 Devourer assault troops. Any military computer would have calculated the odds at impossible. Any logical commander would have ordered a retreat. But Blake was thinking about something else entirely. "Send the deployment orders," he said quietly. "New Carthage, it's our strongest ships and most experienced crews. Harmony Station gets our diplomatic specialists and medical teams. Greenfields gets our supply experts and the farming equipment conversions. Crystal Falls gets our tunnel fighters and mining specialists. Eden's Gate gets our frontier scouts and rapid response teams." Carter looked worried. "Sir, that spreads U.S. impossibly thin. None of those forces can hold against a major assault." "They do not have to hold alone," Blake replied. "Send the call to all allied systems. Tell them we need every volunteer they can spare." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Ships began arriving from across the galaxy. Not military vessels, but converted civilian craft flown by ordinary people who had heard the call for help. Captain Martin Davis commanded a converted passenger liner called Hope's Dream. His crew included teachers, mechanics, shopkeepers, and retired veterans from 6 different species. They had spent their life savings to buy weapons and armor. "We are not soldiers," Davis told Blake during their briefing, "but we watched the recordings from Kepler Station. We know what humans did. There, we want to learn how to do the same thing." Similar stories played out across all 5 threatened worlds. Ordinary people were choosing to become heroes. At New Carthage, the merchant captain Julia Martinez found herself commanding a mixed fleet of human destroyers and alien civilian ships. The trading station was the most heavily defended target, but it was also the most valuable. "Enemy fleet approaching in 6 hours," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Tony Wilson. 30 ships confirmed. They are moving in attack formation. Martinez studied the sensor readings. The enemy fleet was twice the size of her defenders, but she had learned something important from studying human tactics. "All ships, this is Martinez. We are not going to wait for them to attack the station. We are going to meet them halfway." The alien captains were shocked by this order. Traditional defensive doctrine called for staying close to the station's protective shields and weapons. Moving out to meet the enemy in open space seemed like suicide. But Captain Veltar of the Zilonian freighter Crystal Dream responded immediately. "Human Martinez, this is Veltar. My people have no experience with space combat, but we know courage when we see it. Crystal Dream follows your lead." One by one, every civilian captain echoed the same sentiment. Ships designed for cargo and passengers closed with vessels built specifically for war. Their crews fought with desperation born of newfound hope. At Harmony Station, the situation was different, but equally dangerous. The diplomatic outpost had no military defenses, only civilian security. When the Devourer assault ships arrived, they expected to find helpless diplomats and staff workers. Instead, they found Ambassador Sarah Kim standing at the head of a mixed group of humans and aliens, all wearing improvised armor made from station materials. "This is a diplomatic facility," Kim announced over the communication system as the raiders prepared to board. "You are not welcome here." The lead Devourer laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Diplomats do not fight. They talk. They negotiate. They surrender." "Then you have never met human diplomats," Kim replied calmly. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The defenders had no military training, but they had something else: absolute determination to protect the peaceful mission of their station. Ambassador Kim had served in the human military before becoming a diplomat. She organized the defenders into small teams and taught them basic combat principles in the minutes before the attack began. "Remember," she told them, "we are not trying to win a war. We are trying to buy time for reinforcements to arrive. Every minute we hold them here is a minute closer to victory." The fighting was fierce, but brief. The raiders were not prepared for organized resistance from civilians. When reinforcements arrived 2 hours later, they found the station intact, and its defenders victorious. On green fields, the agricultural world faced a different kind of threat. The Devourers planned to poison the farmland and destroy the food supply for 12 other worlds. But the farmers had prepared a surprise. Captain Steve Thompson led a unit of converted farming vehicles against the raider ground forces. Tractors had been fitted with armor and weapons. Crop dusters had been turned into attack aircraft. Even the automated harvesting machines had been reprogrammed for combat. "This is our land," Thompson announced to his mixed human and alien crew. "These crops feed millions of people. Nobody is going to destroy that on our watch." The battle for Greenfields lasted 3 days. The defenders used their knowledge of the terrain to create ambushes and traps. They turned irrigation ditches into defensive lines and grain, silos into fortified positions. When the Devourers tried to use their superior numbers to overwhelm the defenders, they discovered that farmers who spent their lives protecting crops from natural disasters were very good at protecting them from raiders. 2. Crystal Falls presented the most difficult challenge. The mining world was mostly underground, with narrow tunnels and deep shafts. Perfect territory for the Devourers, who were used to fighting in tight spaces. But Sergeant Alex Turner, the Marine hero from Kepler Station, had requested assignment to Crystal Falls specifically because of this challenge. 30 humans and 50 Saurian miners against 300 raiders, Turner reported to Blake. The odds look bad, but we have something they do not. What is that? Blake asked. We know every tunnel, every shaft, every air duct in this mine, and we have 3 days to prepare. Turner and his team turned the entire mining complex into a maze of traps and ambushes. They used mining explosives to seal passages and redirect the raiders into carefully prepared kill zones. They used the mine's industrial equipment as weapons. When the Devourers entered the tunnels, they found themselves fighting not just human Marines and Saurian miners, but the mine itself. Every step took them deeper into a deadly puzzle designed by people who had spent their lives working underground. The raiders who managed to reach the main mining complex found Turner and his team waiting for them in the central chamber. 30 humans and 50 aliens stood in a perfect circle, their weapons pointed outward, their backs to the precious mining equipment they were protecting. This is as far as you go, Turner announced calmly. The final battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the mining complex was damaged but functional. The raiders were defeated. Eden's Gate was the smallest settlement, but in many ways the most important. It represented the frontier spirit that drove both humans and aliens to explore new worlds. The 10,000 colonists included families with children, elderly settlers, and people who had never held a weapon. Captain Beth Rogers arrived with only 20 Marines and 50 volunteers. Against the 100 Devourers approaching the settlement, it seemed hopeless, but the colonists had prepared their own surprise. Every person in the settlement, from children to grandparents, had been organized into a defensive network. They had turned their peaceful town into a fortress. We came here to build something new, explained Mayor Frank Johnson, an elderly human who had helped found the colony. We are not going to let anyone destroy that dream. The defense of Eden's Gate became a story told across the galaxy. Grandmothers operated automated defense turrets while their grandchildren ran ammunition. Teachers organized evacuation routes while mechanics repaired damaged equipment. Artists painted targets for the gunners while musicians coordinated communications. Devourers had never faced an entire community that refused to be victims. When the 3-day battle ended, all 5 worlds remained free. The cost had been enormous. Nearly half the human force was casualties, and many alien volunteers had paid the ultimate price for their courage. But something had changed in the galaxy. Species that had known only fear for generations had learned. They could fight back. People who had accepted raider attacks as inevitable had discovered they could stand together and say no. The memorial services held across all 5 worlds drew representatives from 47 species. They came not to mourn defeat, but to honor sacrifice and celebrate victory. High Chancellor Vex Thara spoke for them all. Today we have seen the birth of something new in our galaxy. Not just human courage, but the courage of all our peoples inspired by human example. 1 year after the first human ships arrived at Kepler Station, the galaxy looked completely different. The Galactic Federation no longer held emergency meetings about raider attacks. Instead, they held celebrations of unprecedented cooperation between different species. Admiral Linda Carter stood before the assembled representatives, wearing a uniform decorated with honors from 17 different alien races. Behind her, Star maps showed what everyone had thought impossible just 1 year ago. The red zones that had marked raider-controlled space were now green areas indicating safe systems. The numbers tell the story, she reported to the packed assembly hall. Raider attacks are down 78%. Trade between worlds has increased by 200%. Most importantly, civilian deaths from piracy are at the lowest levels in recorded history. But the real change went much deeper than statistics. The Zalonian Empire had changed their entire military system to reward individual courage instead of just following orders. The Korthic Confederacy was teaching their soldiers to think for themselves. Even the nomadic void walkers had formed permanent alliances with settled worlds. The biggest change was visible at the Academy on Meridian Prime, where the newest class of defenders was graduating. Lieutenant Jake Morrison stood in formation beside Lieutenant Zareth, a reptilian saurian, and Lieutenant Deep Current Flowing, an Aquarian wearing a special breathing suit that let her live on land. They represented something that had never existed before, a truly mixed defense unit with beings from different worlds fighting as one team. It is not about what species you are anymore, Morrison explained to a group of visiting dignitaries. When you are standing next to someone who is willing to die for the same beliefs you have, their biology does not matter. The Academy had become famous throughout the galaxy. Young beings came from every inhabited world to learn not just fighting techniques, but the philosophy behind them. They studied courses on honor, sacrifice, and what humans called servant. Leadership, the idea that real authority came from taking responsibility for others. Master, Sergeant Nicole Parker, ran the Academy's training programs. She had developed methods that worked for all species, no matter how different they were physically or mentally. The first lesson, she taught each new class, is that being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you are scared, and you act anyway. Her students came from civilizations that had spent thousands of years choosing logic over emotion and efficiency over principles. They struggled with ideas like fighting for strangers or accepting dangerous jobs without guaranteed payment, but they learned. The final test for graduation had become legendary. Each student faced a scenario where they had to choose between personal safety and protecting others. The simulation was designed to be impossible to win. The point was not success, but how you faced certain failure. Lieutenant Zareth's test involved defending a civilian transport under attack by overwhelming enemy forces. Traditional Saurian military doctrine would have called for immediate retreat to save military resources. Instead, Zareth chose to crash his fighter into the largest enemy ship, buying the transport time to escape dock. When he came out of the simulator, his instructor asked the standard question: why did you choose sacrifice over tactical withdrawal? Zareth's answer became part of Academy legend. Because someone has to be willing to pay the price. If not me, then who? The graduation ceremony drew representatives from every major civilization. High Chancellor Vexthara personally gave commissions to the new officers, speaking words that would have been impossible 1 year earlier. Today, you join an order as ancient as civilization itself and as new as tomorrow's sunrise. You are knights, not of any single species or government, but of principles that go beyond biology and politics. But the true test of the new order came when long-range sensors detected something that made every military commander in the galaxy pause in fear. The Devourer home fleet was moving toward inhabited space. The massive armada contained over 200 ships, including vessels larger than anything previously seen. Intelligence reports suggested this was not another raid, but an invasion force meant to establish permanent control over multiple star systems. They are adapting, Admiral Carter explained to an emergency council meeting. Our success has forced them to change tactics. Instead of hit-and-run attacks, they are committing to total conquest. The numbers were terrifying. The combined defensive forces of 17 systems still numbered fewer than 100 ships, many of them converted civilian vessels. Against an invasion fleet of this size, traditional military wisdom suggested evacuation and retreat to more defensible positions. But the vote was unanimous across all species. They would make their stand at the Harmony Nebula, a region of space that served as the gateway to 12 inhabited systems. The final battle began when Admiral Carter's flagship, Valiant, led the mixed fleet into the nebula's swirling gases and colorful clouds. Behind her came the most diverse military force in galactic history. Human destroyers flew alongside Zilonian cruisers. Korthak assault ships were supported by Aquarian submarines. Hundreds of civilian vessels, whose crews had volunteered to fight, followed the warships. Captain Eric Shaw commanded the small warship Defender. His crew consisted of 3 humans, 2 Saurians, 1 Aquarian, and a Korthak engineer who had never served on a mixed-species ship before. Enemy contact in 30 seconds, reported Petty Officer Lisa Brooks, his human sensor operator. Sir, there are so many of them I cannot get an accurate count. Shaw looked around at his crew, seeing fear and determination in every face, human and alien alike. Remember what we learned at the Academy. We are not here to win an impossible battle. We are here to stand for something worth standing for. The battle that followed tested every principle the defenders had learned. Outnumbered 3-1, facing ships with weapons they could not match, the mixed fleet did something that defied all military logic. They advanced. All ships, this is Admiral Carter. Today we fight not just for our worlds, but for the idea that civilized beings do not have to live in fear. Whatever happens, we have already won. We have proven that courage spreads from person to person like fire. The Devourers met their charge with the fury of a species that had never faced organized resistance. But they discovered something there. Previous victims had lacked unity forged through shared sacrifice. When the Zilonian cruiser Star's Edge took critical damage, the human destroyer Phoenix immediately moved to cover her retreat. When Phoenix's shields failed, the Korthak assault ship Hive's Fury placed herself between Phoenix and enemy fire. The pattern repeated throughout the battle. Ships that should have fled stayed to protect damaged allies. Crews that could have escaped chose to remain in hopeless situations rather than abandon their comrades. Captain Shaw's Defender was among the first ships disabled when enemy fire destroyed her engines. As raider boarding teams prepared to storm the ship, his mixed-species crew formed ranks in the main corridor, weapons ready. Any regrets? Shaw asked his crew as they prepared for their final stand. The Korthak engineer, speaking in careful standard language, replied for them all. Only that we cannot fight beside you again tomorrow. They held the corridor until rescue ships arrived. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Devourer invasion fleet was scattered, their ships fleeing toward deep space. They had encountered something their species could not understand or defeat, beings who valued others' lives more than their own survival. But the real victory was measured in what happened after the fighting. As rescue ships moved through the nebula, they found crews of different species working together to repair damaged vessels. They shared food and medical supplies without regard for political boundaries. They treated wounded enemies alongside fallen comrades. The age of myths had ended. The age of knights had begun. Admiral Carter's final report to Earth Command was simple. Mission accomplished. The galaxy knows how to hope again. And in the deepest reaches of space, where the Devourer survivors fled to lick their wounds, their commanders faced a new reality. They had encountered an enemy that could not be defeated through superior numbers or better weapons. They had faced beings willing to die for strangers, fight for principles, and sacrifice everything for ideas like honor and justice. For the first time in their species' history, the Devourers knew fear, The galaxy had found its protectors. They came from every star and every world where someone was willing to stand up and declare, "Not on my watch." Knights were no longer myths. They were reality. And their numbers grew every day as ordinary people learned they could choose to become heroes. The age of fear was over. The age of courage had begun, and it would spread to every corner of the galaxy.